So it is a hot topic. It's heavily debated. We've heard everything. We've heard everything. There are people who say that you should you can feed your baby's milk for up to a year. It's just like there's no reason to quit. We've heard that. We've heard 8 weeks is pretty much what a doe will naturally kick a kid off. We've heard everything. What is your opinion?
My opinion.
Get closer so we can hear.
So, I would never feed a kid for less than 8 weeks. We'll start out there. They require that growing and to start developing their rumen. So you feed a minimum of 8 weeks.
Minimum of 8 weeks, yeah.
Minimum of 8 weeks.
And there's a reason for that.
There is a reason for that. What's your reason for that?
Like an actual scientific reason. Well, finish your thought and then I'll say why.
Okay.
How I base.
So, and then after that, we base it on how big the kids are, how well they're doing, how much hay they're eating. But I normally try to go 12 weeks.
Okay. So 12 weeks, and we hear that a lot. And in fact, we're making this video because we don't get very many comments. We're still a small channel. So, but this person commented on, we were showing our wethers, or soon to be wethers. They're not wethers yet.
They're not wethers yet.
And she commented and she said, you know, pretty much black and white, they shouldn't be weaned until 12 weeks and shouldn't be castrated until 16. So now you heard my wife's theory on that, and that's, I mean, I totally agree with that. And I have the reasoning behind that is and why there's no benefit to really feeding a goat past 12 weeks. We've tried everything. Okay, we've tried the 8-week thing. We've tried past 12 weeks.
I've gone 16 weeks before.
We really have, and there's not much benefit. They seem fatter, but that's because, and this is the whole reason. This is the whole philosophy that I base, not philosophy, the whole, I don't know, concept I base my weaning on. And it's my job as a goat keeper to, when they're born, their rumens are not developed. They don't have a rumen. They're not born with a rumen. Their abomasum is the stomach that they use to digest animal fats. It's like our stomach, and they're born with that abomasum active, and it's larger than the rumen. So over the course of 8 weeks, your job as a goat keeper is to develop a rumen.
Yes.
And as a rumen develops, the abomasum needs to shrink and become less active. And so our whole weaning principles are based on building a rumen. And so you heard my wife say it depends on how much hay they're eating, and what she means by that is how developed her rumen is. If they have a fully developed rumen and are coughing up cud and chewing cud, and drinking tons of water and stuff, you don't need to feed them any further, and that happens by about 8 weeks. If
They don't need milk after that because your job is to build the rumen.
Right.
The abomasum will gradually shrink as they get they develop the rumen. And I've been asked before, I weaned my goats, I have extra milk, can I feed it to the kids? Why would you wean them and then want to feed your extra milk to them? But the reason you don't do that is because they don't have the way to process that milk anymore. Their abomasum is so small and so irrelevant that the milk is going to go into their rumen. You don't want milk in your rumen.
Right.
So, not a good idea to feed your weaned kids milk again.
Right. Milk is an animal fat, and these animals have a goat has a 3.5 gallon rumen, and that's just a giant fermenting vat. So you know, they've evolved to live off of grass, not animal fat. You know, that's just to get them through the breastfeeding part of their life.
Yeah.
Okay, so on to castration.
Yes.
And man, we've heard all kinds of things about this. And I'm going to state this right now. If you're a smart goat keeper, you know that the way you do it isn't necessarily the way to do it. Okay, there are people who do all kinds of things. There are people who raise their bucks until they're full grown and then castrate them. There are people who do it pretty early. You know, and there's all kinds of theories about why. And basically, my whole point on castration is I think 16 weeks is the absolute limit. Like if I don't hit 4 months with castration, I'm selling a buck, because to my way of thinking, I don't want this wether to ever produce any buck hormones. I don't want them to get to that point to where they're ready to go in the rut. That their testicles and their male chemical composition are too far advanced to just whack them off at that point. That's my opinion. I know people that do it way past that and they're fine.
Yeah.
We actually sold 2 bucks. We sold a buck that was, he was a year old or so. Junior.
He was, yeah, junior. He was about a year old, and then Jupiter was 4.
Yeah, Jupiter was over 3. He was 4. And what they did was they bought the bucks and they bred the older one to their does, and then they castrated both of them. Both of those bucks died. I don't know what happened. He had the vet castrate them. In my opinion, that's
He
where.
banded them.
Yeah, he banded them.
He banded a 4-month-old or 4-year-old buck who was in the middle of the rut.
Right, in the middle of rut and stuff. That's a huge shock. If you know goats very well at all, you know that any kind of dramatic system change is hard for them to take, and plus being at a new home. Anyway, so we try to band after weaning and before 4 months old, and one of the reasons is that we use an ancient bander. It's a tail docker castrator.
It's probably from the 50s.
20s. It's like 1920s era, and it's more
pretty
sentimental
old.
to us.
Yeah.
Because it came with our farm, our last farm.
Wyoming.
But it does much smaller testicles, and that's one reason
Yeah.
that I don't like to let them get too big, because accidents can happen with that little tail docker. Now, people these days are using the California bander, and you can do a much bigger set of testicles with the California bander than you can our docker.
So part of our reason for doing it that size is because that's the size we can do. We can't do any bigger than that.
It has little to do with it, but yeah.
It is a...
To me, it's a good guide. Like if they're too big for that, I'm bumping 4 months.
Their hormones are developed, and you're starting to get into fall, and it's just you know, much better to do it before that ever starts.
Right. But it's okay. So basically, our opinions are is you can wean any time between 8 and 12 weeks, and you can band any time between 12 and 16 weeks.
Yeah.
And I guess if you feel different, that's okay.
That's okay.
You know, our
your goats, you do your thing.
Yeah, you do your goats, and realize everybody else does theirs.
Yep.
But we have great goats. All of our wethers have gone to pack goats. We specifically cater to the pack goat community.
That's why these guys have horns.
That's why we leave the horns on the wethers.
Yep.
And we very much appreciate the pack goat community for buying our wethers.
Yes.
So that's our slice on weaning and castration. Take care, everybody.